Hi guys, how you doing? Back again after such a long break. Anyway, I thought I'd come on and we're going to try this new format now. The way I've got it set up is basically because I'm doing lots more streaming now, and if I get it set up like this, I can basically just jump from one topic to another. I'm not going to abandon Dragon Ball, obviously, but I wanted to basically branch out into other things. So let's talk about what I came here to talk about. Discussion about what is considered a budget deck. Now, I just watched this video here, a deck profile from DBS-Decks. Always great content, always love the stuff. I'll put a link down in the description to this one, but it's basically a third place red-blue Kohler mid-range deck. And he basically went through it. It's great as always, don't disagree with anything he said, it's all fine and dandy, like sour candy. But anyway, if you move into the comments though, you'll notice a lot of people are having a bit of an issue with the price of the deck overall. There's a few here if you want to go and check out the comments, whatever. But it really brought up a really interesting discussion that I wanted to have, and that's what did you consider to be budget in this game? Now, I put up some budget decks before, like a charged Beerus deck, which I think is like, outdated. Now there's a new leader. Even though the leader itself costs a bit, not really, like $2, but it did when I made the deck. So anyway, let's have a look at basically what they're talking about right now. Now, I basically verbatim copied the deck that DBS-Decks made here, and as you can see, $967 for the whole thing. Now, if you're thinking that's a lot, oh boy howdy, I live in Australia, and if you convert that, we're looking at nearly $1,500 for this deck. Now let's just open up into it. I'm not going to go through how the spoilers of what's coming up. I'm not going to go over how the deck runs. That's on him. That's in his video. Go check out his video. I guarantee it explains everything. But basically, this is the rundown of the whole thing. And as you can see, a couple of cards in there that's not really too friendly to the hip pocket. We got the 2020 Championship Frieza and the SS Vegeta, which, if we go back to this screen, you'll see that the Frieza for 4 copies is $300, and the Vegeta is basically $300. I don't know if you're off 4 cents. But yeah, so if you take that same deck and take it out, which is like basically what you can say to people in running. Okay, no, before we even go there, we're jumping ahead too far. First of all, we shouldn't be expecting people to modify their decks from the get-go to make them budget-friendly. If you have a deck and you happen to have the cards for it, you shouldn't really be limiting yourself to those limitations. But if you're going out there, it's only if you put upon yourself, say you're going to tell people this is a budget deck or this is a reasonably priced deck, and then you expect them to blow $300 on 4 cards. That's a different level. The way that DBS-Decks put it, I think he came across a bit like, this is the only way you can run it, but it's just like, there's no doubt that this $300 2-drop cross freezer is the best option out of the couple of options available for running the swap engine. But it's still $300 more expensive than the alternative, which I've put in here, because as you can see, this deck is $967. But if you take out the 4 $300 freezers and the 4 Super Saiyan Vegetas, which he himself said he never used, and swap them out for a max speed Goku and the original 2-cost swap freezer, you go down to $328. But is that still budget? I don't really think so. Especially when it comes down to the fact that you're asking for like budget costs on things. It really varies on a couple of things, whether you're talking about the whole deck in general, like you have to buy everything wholesale, everything together. Is that budget? Is it only new cards from new sets? You're assuming people buying the deck have the previous cards available to them. Things along those lines. Even like regions, like I just said, over here where I buy them from, you're looking at an extra $500 on top of the $1,000 you guys in America would spend. So like it comes down to that kind of thing. But then we have to also look at the type of deck it is. Can a cooler deck, as it is presented here or even here, can that ever be classified as budget? No matter how much you cut off of it. Like if you remove all of the 4-cost arrival coolers, if you remove all the 100% full power freezers, if you remove all those cards from the deck, is it even a functional cooler deck as it's worth discussing? Like there are other options for you when you're running a deck. You don't have to run a cooler deck. You could run something else. There are other options in that same set which can definitely be considered more budget. So if you're coming along and saying to people, look, I have a budget variant of this deck, how far can you go for it to be budget? So what I have here, my last example, is a bare bones, I have removed basically everything I can to bring the price down. And basically put that together. So let me put that into a visual view so you can have a look here. I've tried to basically kind of like even it out. As you can see, even in budget, I can't remove all the coolers and all the freezers because then there's no point running the deck. You might as well run something else. Something that gives you the same kind of options but doesn't force you down the like minus power track. So I still put a couple in there so it's still like a functional cooler deck. But it's not like, it's still using other options. You're still using things like max speed instead of Super Saiyan Vegeta. You're still using the Super Saiyan 3 Goku to help you kind of get board presence. You're more focused on like getting rid of their life rather than the alternative of like milling them out as a equally plausible win condition. Oh, another thing I mentioned on the this 328 is I changed out the Black Smoke Dragon to the Frieza Army Reborn because it's half the price. And really, if it comes down to it, you're still not going to card out of their hand. Black Smoke helps more towards the mill win condition. And I've also seen people complain they never get to 12 cards in drop area, so they can't even lower the price of it. I mean, the actual card cost to play the card, not the actual what the card's worth. So let me just go over a couple of things I've done here. I've basically split the Beerus to half Beerus, half Whis, because if you're not running a lot of arrivals, there's no point. There's no point going for it. The reason why people run 4 Beerus is because they want to keep abusing the arrival mechanic. And if you don't have a lot of arrivals, there's no point. Even Majin Buu has skyrocketed in price. So there's no point even like discussing it at this point when you're talking about a budget variant. After Image is fine. I took out some cards for Denial of Hope. Denial of Hope is just so good. Like just the counter in like this world of 3-cost invoker cards, we have to run something to interact with that. And if you can't afford the big chonguses, you've got to run littler cards that can help, like interact with that. That's why we're also running the 2-cost Frieza Undying Emperor, which behaves the same way. It just gives you a body instead of Denial of Hope, which just out and out gets rid of the card because it doesn't essentially solve the problem. It just delays it a turn. We basically swapped out the coolers as well because we're not abusing the Beerus. For these Frieza Unending Onslaught, so we can get back the full power Frieza if we lose it somehow. It's just another option like that, and we do run one of the Uneasy. We don't have to run that, it's just another option. You can swap that out for another Frieza Undying. It's really about what options you have available to you and the kind of utility. But this is what I'm talking about when we're talking about budget, is that you have to work with more utility cards rather than work with the stock. This card is $20, but it's required for the deck type. So that's where this comes from. So, now that we've talked about what is budget and what is incredibly expensive, let me just show you one more deck. This is the cooler deck that I was running, and I think is more of a kind of a middle ground. As you can see, I'm at 205, so not huge. I mean, I could put the secret rare in here, but this is what I ran the last time I went to an event. And as you can see, the strategy for it is kind of a middle ground between the budget and the mid-range price point. A lot of these choices are because I just don't have the cards, which is a massive thing. People, a lot of the time, the reason they're not building a deck based off the limitations or they can't afford the cards or anything like that, it's just that they don't have them. It's a different kind of level. It's the idea of like basically building a card to your means rather than your wants. And this kind of like strategy, it doesn't mean it's not a good strategy. The deck still works fine. It's just about kind of going through and when you're talking to people about deck profiles, kind of just bringing yourself down to a point where it's more feasible for everyone to grasp where you're coming from with a deck. You can easily just turn around and say, oh, just buy this deck, it doesn't matter how much it costs, it's the only good way to run the deck. If you're going to have any chance of succeeding at a higher level of play, you've got to fork out $300 for this card, $300 for that card. That's the only way to do it. I mean, that's fine, it's a fine process, and of course, you can't really argue with results at the end of the day. If you want to be a competitive player, that's what you got to do at the end of the day. But because of this, I'm basically decided from now on, every deck profile I do on this channel, I'm going to do like multiple variants of it, just so everyone can have a point of entry to the deck. If you're not sure if you like the playstyle, I don't really expect you to spend $1,000 on it from the get-go. Maybe try running like, the cheaper variant of it. See if you like how the deck plays. If you like how it plays, maybe invest a few more cards in it, bring yourself up to this level. And if you like it at that point, you might even put some more cards into it later on down the track. But that barrier of entry in this game, unfortunately, is getting wider. where you're requiring not just like a secret rare, like the Victory Strike secret rare, which was that break point for a while in this game, between like people who spend like dump trucks of money, between people who play casually, till now where people have to fork out money to buy multiple copies of cards for a deck, and that just, you see how big of a wharf, like how big of a gap that puts between prices on decks. So yeah, overall, budget decks, I think maybe $100. Do you reckon? I'm not totally sure. Really depends how much you spend on cards beforehand. But I really think this is a good point of discussion. What do you guys think? What do you reckon is a good budget deck? Do you think some decks cannot be budget? Is there there's a certain point when by taking away cards from it in order to save money, you essentially compromise its entire strategy? I mean, I know there's some decks like Margin Blue or whatever. There are certain cards in it. If you take away from the deck, it just doesn't function. So you need those cards, and of course, those ones are the most expensive. But then, can you ever classify that deck as a budget deck? Can every deck be a budget deck if you take away enough cards? Probably. But is it worth running at that point? I'll leave that up to you. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you all next time.